25. 25. Alice Nakiri in Lao. Tilde as usual every 100 power stones equals bonus chapter. Less than greater than 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 less than greater than. Tonight? Looks like I won't get to see that showdown tonight. Alice Nakiri said, somewhat regretfully. Huh? Alice, you have something on tonight? We were thinking of throwing a welcome party for you guys tonight. Quote. Yoshino Yuki asked with some confusion upon hearing this. It was only their first day moving in. Were they already planning to stay out all night? I've been abroad all this time. And since coming back, I've been at the resort. So, I really need to go see Grandpa. Alice Nakiri explained. Before returning, she had received a call from Senzamon Nakiri. She definitely had to go back for dinner and a chat tonight. It might get very late, so she wasn't planning on coming back to the dorm. As for Ryo Kurokiba, although he was her attendant, he didn't follow her around every single moment. Now that both had moved into Polar Star, Alice only planned to go back by herself and had no intention of bringing Ryo Kurokiba along. Grandpa? Alice's grandpa is the director. Right? Indeed. After coming back, you definitely need to see your family. Quote. Everyone nodded. If Alice didn't go back in this situation, it would be a bit unreasonable. In that case, let's postpone the welcome party until tomorrow. School starts tomorrow anyway, and maybe we'll even have other new members. Though the probability isn't very high. Ryoko Sakki suggested. If Alice wasn't there, then the welcome party would naturally be incomplete. Besides, there was the issue of new members. Although the chances of new people coming were low. But if there really were some? So, tomorrow night would be most appropriate. Hearing this, everyone nodded in agreement. Afterwards, Alice Nakiri headed to the Nakiri family's residential area, while the others waited to watch the match between Ryo Kurokiba and Satoshi Ishiki. With a dedicated car service, Alice Nakiri quickly returned to the Nakiri family's residential area and met her grandfather as well as Arina Nakiri. I'm back, Grandpa. Are you doing well? Quote. Seeing her grandfather, Alice Nakiri went over directly to greet him. As for Arina Nakiri, the moment she saw her, Alice felt a bit annoyed. And thinking about how she could never catch up to her, Alice Nakiri also felt quite helpless. However, Alice had somewhat come to terms with it now. Arina Nakiri's advantages were clear. It was basically impossible for Alice to defeat her unless Arina had some major accident. Although she was annoyed by Arina, she didn't want to see anything happen to her own relative. So she could only change her mindset. Since she couldn't defeat Arina Nakiri herself, she would just find outside help. Even if she wasn't the one to defeat her, at least it was someone she found. And this person, naturally, was Yuki. As for Ryo Kurokiba, although he was also stronger than her, it was still unlikely he could defeat Arina Nakiri. You're back too? And you're planning to study at Totsuki. Quote. Looking at her cousin, although she also found her annoying, Arina Nakiri was quite surprised at this moment. After all, Alice Nakiri had always been abroad. Though she would return occasionally, she usually wouldn't stay long and would leave again soon. For her to plan to return to Totsuki to study this time was very unexpected. She knew some of the achievements Alice Nakiri had made over the years. However, Arina Nakiri didn't care. After all, Alice's culinary skills were what they were. Those achievements were merely in a relatively new field. Her culinary skills were stronger than Alice's, so she wouldn't care about such things. What? Is there a problem with me coming back to school? Alice Nakiri said, somewhat dissatisfied. Senzamon Nakiri felt a bit helpless about this. These two sisters constantly had minor frictions. But there was a good side to it. Though there were conflicts, their familial bond was stronger than anything else. No matter how much they bickered, if one of them got into trouble, the other wouldn't stand idly by. So, although they seemed like fire and water now, Senzamon Nakiri didn't say much. The two continued to butt heads like this, only stopping when it was time for dinner. Alice, you've been at the resort all this time and have spent some time with Yuki. What kind of person do you think he is? Senzamon Nakiri asked. From the information he had gathered, Yuki seemed like a very good person. But that was just information. So, he was now asking his granddaughter. Among the people here, Alice Nakiri had spent the most time with Yuki. As for whether his granddaughter was too young to understand human nature, Senzamon Nakiri wasn't worried at all. As members of the Nakiri family, the environment they grew up in ensured they couldn't be that simple. Especially Alice Nakiri, because she was always the one overlooked in her childhood. It wasn't that her family didn't care about her, but outsiders did. When outsiders came to the Nakiri household, they were mostly there for Arina Nakiri. Arina was the one they praised. As for Alice, although she was also praised, it was mostly just in passing. So, from a young age, Alice Nakiri had seen through the true faces of these people. She understood human nature quite well. Even Arina Nakiri, a novice with almost zero common sense about daily life, wasn't weak in terms of interpersonal relationships. After spending over a month together, one might not be able to see through a person completely, but a basic understanding would definitely be there. Yuki is a very impressive person, and his personality is also very good. Alice Nakiri naturally had a very good impression of Yuki. After all, Yuki's personality was like that, coupled with his outstanding abilities. Someone like him was destined to attract the attention of many members of the opposite sex. Alice Nakiri herself had also reached the age of youthful infatuation. Among her peers, the only one whose abilities were stronger than hers was Ryo Kurokiba. But Ryo Kurokiba was only strong in culinary skills. As for other aspects, it was fine when there was no comparison. But when compared to Yuki, there was really nothing left. After spending this period together, she had already developed some favorable feelings for Yuki. However, she also knew that Yuki had a childhood friend. Alice Nakiri didn't care about this. As the saying goes, childhood friend loses to the newcomer. That was a classic trope. Although reality might differ somewhat. As long as they hadn't confirmed their relationship, it wasn't a problem for her. Alice Nakiri had lived abroad for many years. While her way of thinking wouldn't be completely changed, there would definitely be some influence. That's why she would fight for it, rather than just watch from the sidelines. Less than greater than 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 less than greater than. #. Keep the chapters coming. Support with Power Stones. #. Every 100 Power Stones equals 1 bonus chapter. #. Add to library. 27. The opening ceremony. Soma Yukihira's bold move. As usual, every 100 Power Stones equals bonus chapter. Let's keep pushing. Less than greater than 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 less than greater than. The bathroom situation was something Yuki had been planning since he entered Polar Star. Although it seemed like all he needed to do was wait for Soma Yukihira to join and then give him a heads up. Yuki felt it wasn't foolproof. So, he discussed it with everyone. And they eventually added another bathroom. This fundamentally prevented the incident where Megumi Tadokura was put in a compromising position. In the original story, of course, just in case, Yuki also planned to keep an eye on things when Soma Yukihira joined Polar Star. The night passed uneventfully. Early the next morning, everyone got up, prepared themselves, and headed towards the opening ceremony venue. Before leaving, Yuki did some fishing. What he caught this time made his eyes light up. The ingredient he caught was called barbecue pig. And the sheer quantity was astonishing. An entire hind leg. This was the best ingredient Yuki had obtained so far. Barbecue pig already had a capture level, although it was only capture level 1. But in the world of Tariko, even a capture level 1 beast required 10 fully armed gourmet hunters to capture. Gourmet hunters in the world of Tariko were completely different from those in the normal world. They were individuals who would bring RPGs to a fight. No questions asked. That world's technology was also far more advanced than food was. Naturally, the power of their weapons was also greater. Even so, a capture level 1 ingredient still required 10 fully armed gourmet hunters. This showed how difficult it was to obtain such ingredients. However, thinking about the barbecue pig's data, it wasn't that surprising. A barbecue pig had a body length of 4 meters, a height of 3 meters, and weighed 1.5 tons. With that size, once it charged, its power was undeniably immense. What Yuki obtained this time was a hind leg. Just the hind leg alone weighed over 100 kilograms, it had to be said. This was a very good haul. With such a good catch, Yuki was in a great mood. He still needed to attend the opening ceremony. Although he had special privileges, those privileges were limited to not attending classes. He still had to participate in special assessments and events. For example, the opening ceremony and events like the training camp. After attending the opening ceremony, Yuki could just go back and relax. I'm so jealous of Yuki. He has the same privileges as Ishiki-senpai and the others. Doesn't even need to go to class. Quote, Yoshino Yuki was extremely envious when she learned Yuki didn't need to attend class. Just thinking about how she and the others had to attend classes and take assessments made her feel down. Although such entrance assessments weren't a problem for her, having the free time to do what she wanted was obviously the best. Those privileges require sufficiently strong culinary skills. If you awaken some overpowered ability, become a senior chef, and have a connection like Mr. Dujima, then you could have it too. Ryoko Saki said, somewhat amused. She also envied Yuki's privileges. But she also knew that with her own abilities, it would be impossible for her to get such privileges. I was just daydreaming. Ryoko, do you have to be so harsh? Quote, Yoshino Yuki pouted at her friend. To be so blunt while she was fantasizing. That was a true best friend. All right. As everyone chatted, they found a spot to stand. Soon, the opening ceremony began. After a series of events, award presentations, summaries, and such, it quickly came to a very special segment, the transfer student representative's speech. However, this year's transfer students were different from previous years. There was only one, so he naturally became the representative. I remember this year's transfer student exam judge was Arina Nakiri. Someone actually survived her judgment? Looks like this transfer student is really something, Zenji Marui said in surprise. Although there were many transfer students who wanted to enter Totsuki every year, the ones who actually got in were the cream of the crop. But this year was special because the judge was Arina Nakiri. Her god's tongue was incredibly famous. Her saying something was delicious carried a lot of weight. Conversely, if she said something was not delicious, it meant it really was not delicious. Anyone who knew this would probably avoid that restaurant. So, Arina Nakiri's words could often determine a chef's future. Precisely because of this, unless absolutely necessary, no one would want Arina Nakiri to taste their cooking. After all, getting a delicious evaluation from this young lady was very difficult. Everyone had initially thought that with Arina Nakiri as the judge, the transfer students would be completely wiped out. But they hadn't expected one to get through in the end. To get a positive evaluation from the god's tongue is really impressive. Everyone nodded in agreement. But after Soma Yukihiro took the stage and began his speech, the students below erupted into chaos. Soma Yukihiro basically started by throwing shade at everyone, saying that Totsuki students were all flowers grown in a greenhouse, and such. As soon as these words came out, all the students were in an uproar. Actually, Soma Yukihiro's words were full of stereotypes. In Soma Yukihiro's view, so-called culinary schools were just about teachers lecturing above and students obediently learning below. No practical experience at all. Many culinary schools were indeed like this. But Totsuki was the complete opposite. Totsuki had always emphasized practical experience. And another thing, most Totsuki students came from wealthy or influential families. These families were either established culinary families or ran numerous chain restaurants, high-class restaurants, and the like. These students might be somewhat arrogant, but most were actually quite skilled and often worked in their family restaurants to gain experience. So, Soma Yukihiro's indiscriminate attack offended everyone. It could be said his first impression on everyone was extremely poor. This guy is way too cocky. How is he going to survive in this school? Don't forget, these Totsuki students aren't pushovers. The Polar Star residents were also quite shocked. Soma Yukihiro was seriously gutsy. At Totsuki, underhanded tactics were common. Maybe he's just confident in his culinary skills. It has to be said. His cooking is quite good. Among our year, he'd be among the top, Yuki said. Before, to witness the beginning of the plot, he had been constantly hanging around Yukihiro restaurant and had naturally eaten Jochihiro's and Soma Yukihiro's cooking many times. However, their relationship was just acquaintance level. They weren't very familiar. Less than greater than 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 tilde hash. Keep the chapters coming. Support with power stones tilde hash. Every 100 power stones equals 1 bonus chapter tilde hash. Add to library. 28. Polar Star's reputation. Bonus. Tilde thank you for 100 power stones. Here's your bonus chapter. Less than greater than 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 less than greater than. You know him, Yuki? Quote. Hearing this, everyone was rather surprised. They hadn't expected Yuki to know this arrogant fellow. I know him. And don't underestimate this guy. Besides his own culinary skills, he has quite the background. Yuki emphasized Soma Yukihiro's background. Background? Does this guy have some impressive background? Alice Nakiri became interested. Speaking of backgrounds, hers was without a doubt the biggest here. After all, the Nakiri family background in Japan was essentially culinary royalty. It's pretty impressive. His father is Joichiro Yukihira, formerly known as Joichiro Saiba. He was the second seat of the Elite 10 during the Golden Age and is now the world-famous wandering chef. Yuki just went ahead and spoiled Soma Yukihiro's identity. Joichiro Saiba, the special class chef Joichiro Saiba? This guy is actually his son? No wonder he passed Arena's God tongue test. But why did Mr. Saiba change his last name? Did he marry into the family? Quote, Alice Nakiri was somewhat incredulous. Joichiro was a special class chef. There were only a handful of special class chefs in the whole world. Without a doubt, Joichiro was already at the very top of the international culinary scene. But for a chef like him to marry into a family, that was indeed something she found unbelievable. I don't know the specifics. I recognized him because I saw his photo at Uncle Dujima's place before, Yuki said. Although he knew why Joichiro Yukihiro changed his last name, there was no need to mention it. Even so, saying those things will inevitably make him a target. He's still too reckless, even though they knew Soma Yukihiro's background. Honestly, what he said was still going a bit too far. It could only be said that first impressions were really important. The main reason Soma Yukihiro gained everyone's recognition in the original story was because he lived in Polar Star. Once someone lived in Polar Star, as long as they weren't inherently evil or had a terrible personality, everyone would accept them. Moreover, Soma Yukihiro had helped Megumi Tadokara in the original story, naturally gaining everyone's approval. The opening ceremony quickly ended. Throughout the entire ceremony, Yuki could clearly sense that both Senzamon Nakiri and Arena Nakiri's attention was mainly focused on him. Other people might not have noticed, but Yuki had food honor. His senses were inherently very sharp, so when their attention was on him, Yuki could clearly perceive it. He wasn't surprised by this. After all, given his current situation, it would be more strange if these two didn't pay attention to him. The opening ceremony concluded, and everyone else went to class. Yuki, however, returned to the dormitory. His goal now was to continue improving his culinary skills. After returning, Fumio Damido quickly found him. The reason was simple. Several ingredients had been delivered. Yuki, did you buy all these ingredients? Fumio Damido couldn't help but ask as she looked at them. Not exactly. This is more like an advance investment from the Nakiri family. Any ingredients I need at Totsuki, I can just contact the supply department, and they'll deliver them directly. Yuki explained that Jin Dujima had told him this in his current life. Since the Nakiri family planned to invest in him, it naturally wouldn't be such a small amount. The ingredients he needed, just a word, and they would be delivered. It was just that the amount of ingredients Polar Star could store was limited. Otherwise, Yuki would have asked for more. As for his fishing space, although he could store many ingredients inside it, such a measure was completely unnecessary for him. Kid, don't sell yourself short just for these things. Fumio Damido couldn't help but say as she watched the staff moving the ingredients. Yuki was a member of Polar Star, so she naturally cared about him. She didn't want to see Yuki selling himself short for such things. After all, Yuki's potential was obvious. Once he grew stronger, getting anything he wanted would be easy. Don't worry, Auntie Fumio, I know what I'm doing, Yuki said. He knew Fumio Damido was worried about him. He wasn't an idiot. He naturally wouldn't sell himself short. These things were, ultimately, just a favor. Once he solved the goddamn problem in the future, this favor would naturally be repaid. It's good that you understand. Fumio Damido nodded, looking at the ingredients being moved inside. She thought it was pretty great. After all, Polar Star's position at Totsuki was quite unique. The Golden Ages series of dramatic events led to Polar Star adopting an independent accounting system. Simply put, the school couldn't interfere in Polar Star's affairs. But Polar Star also needed to manage its own resources. So, Fumio Damido had to worry about everything. Now, in terms of ingredient supply, she no longer had to think too much about it. One call from Yuki, and a large batch of ingredients would be delivered. As time passed, other residents also returned to the dormitory. Seeing so many ingredients, everyone was quite surprised. After all, before, many of the ingredients they used were self-grown or raised. They hadn't expected Yuki could get so many ingredients just by making a call. This was obviously good news. However, before everyone could be happy for long, a stranger, yet familiar, person appeared at Polar Star. This guy is actually taking the entrance exam at Polar Star? And Auntie Fumio actually agreed? Must be his father pulling strings. Quote, Yoshino Yuki was surprised looking at Soma Yukihiro working in the kitchen. Others had similar reactions. They were like this because it was actually very difficult to move into Polar Star now. In the past few years, due to the rapid rise of Yuki and Megumi Tadokara, plus Satoshi Ishiki becoming an Elite 10 member, the Polar Star dormitory had become quite famous. Even the weakest members, Daigo Aoki and Shoji Seto, were still above average among the first years. As for the others, they were all top-notch students. So, Polar Star had become a gathering place for elites, leading many students to want to join. But Fumio Damido was focused on maintaining Polar Star's reputation as a place for truly exceptional students. Real top-tier students, like Takumi Aldini, wouldn't change dormitories for something like this. Those who wanted to switch dormitories were mostly those who couldn't pass the test over time. Fumio Damido grew tired of it. Plus, Yuki and the others were so exceptional that she just closed off the entrance exam route. Unless the new members were directly introduced by the current residents, like Alice Nakiri and Ryo Kurokiba. Otherwise, even the school couldn't just shove students into Polar Star. That's why everyone was so surprised to see Soma Yukihiro appear and take the entrance exam. But after thinking it over, it wasn't really that strange. After all, Soma Yukihiro's father had come from here. It wasn't surprising for him to use his connections to get in. Less than greater than 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 tilde hash. Keep the chapters coming. Support with Power Stones tilde hash. Every 100 Power Stones equals 1 bonus chapter tilde hash. Add to library. 29. Ishiki Satoru. Completely outmaneuvered by Yuki. Tilde as usual every 100 Power Stones equals bonus chapter. Tilde thank you for the support. Tilde let's keep pushing. Less than greater than 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 less than greater than. In the original story, Soma Yukihiro used leftover ingredients from Polar Star dormitory for his cooking. Now, Polar Star had no shortage of ingredients. So Soma easily passed the entrance exam. Fumio Damido wasn't surprised by Soma Yukihiro passing. After all, as Jochihiro's son, he was obviously no slouch. Since Fumio Damido had temporarily closed Polar Star's entrance exam route, the school naturally wouldn't send students over. Upon learning this, Joichiro himself contacted Fumio Damido directly. This was how Fumio Damido learned that Soma Yukihiro was Jochihiro's son. After the exam, Fumio Damido explained some of the dormitory rules to Soma Yukihira, while the others went to prepare for the evening party. As for Yuki, he kept an eye on Soma Yukihira. After all, who knew if the plot would have its own inertia? Only after seeing Soma enter the men's bathroom did Yuki stop watching him. Night fell, and everyone gathered in Zenji Marui's room. It had to be said, Zenji was a true masochist. Although he verbally opposed everyone using his room for parties, after each party, he would quietly clean up the room himself. And every time, despite saying he didn't want them in his room, he would still open the door and let people in after they knocked. It was classic tsundere behavior. Everyone had also noticed this, which is why they always held parties in Zenji Marui's room. If he truly opposed it, no one would shamelessly insist on staying there. Almost everyone came to the evening gathering. No one was absent. This time, it wasn't because of Satoshi Ishiki's special method of summoning people. Everyone simply accepted invitations to welcome new members. A few years ago, Yuki had put a stop to Ishiki's special method of summoning people. After all, Yuki didn't want a head suddenly popping out of the ceiling while he was sleeping. He also didn't want Ishiki creeping around in Megumi's or anyone else's ceiling. In the manga, such a scene might be humorous or interesting, but in reality, it was pure harassment. Yuki certainly wouldn't indulge such behavior. So, after Satoshi Ishiki crawled through the ceiling once, Yuki bought a bunch of mouse traps and sticky traps, arming the entire inside of the ceiling. With that lesson learned, Satoshi Ishiki never dared to crawl through the ceiling again. Not that he was scared of mouse traps or sticky traps, but because of Yuki's words. After Ishiki had his little mishap, Yuki also added, this time it was mouse traps and glue traps. Next time, who knows what it will be. So, all of Satoshi Ishiki's bad habits were corrected one by Yuki. Now, if he needed someone, he would knock on their door or use Fumio Damida's intercom. It could be said that Satoshi Ishiki was completely outmatched by Yuki in every aspect. Before, at least his culinary skills were stronger than Yuki's. But now, even that was no longer true. Where's Yuki? He's the only one missing. Quote, in Zenji Marui's room, everyone had already gathered, but Yuki was absent. Yuki said he's preparing a surprise for us. So he's still in the kitchen, Megumi Tadokara explained. Hearing this, everyone was rather curious, wondering what surprise Yuki had in store for them. Then let's wait a bit. But can someone tell me what's up with those two? Yoshino Yuki pointed to Ryo Kurokiba and Soma Yukihira, who were staring intently at each other. Oh, that's because of Ishiki-senpai. Ryo-kun kept pestering Ishiki-senpai. So when Yukihira-kun arrived, Ishiki-senpai just shifted Ryo-kun's attention to him. Alice Nakiri knew all about this matter. Ryo Kurokiba kept pestering Satoshi Ishiki. Ishiki, having no other options and seeing a somewhat similar cooking fanatic with strong culinary skills in Soma Yukihira, shifted the focus onto Soma. So, Satoshi Ishiki deflected the challenge, having Ryo Kurokiba compete with Soma Yukihira. Whoever won 10 times in a row could challenge him once. Soma Yukihira, curious as to why Ryo Kurokiba kept challenging Satoshi Ishiki, asked for the reason. After learning a bit about the Elite 10, Soma naturally set his sights on Ishiki as well. With both people targeting him, Satoshi Ishiki naturally had these two face off against each other first. It had to be said, Satoshi Ishiki played this quite well, setting Ryo Kurokiba and Soma Yukihira against each other. However, the current Soma Yukihira was no match for Ryo Kurokiba. Soma wasn't at his full potential yet. The training camp was a turning point for Soma Yukihiro's development. It was after that turning point that Soma began to truly grow. Before that, he was no match for Ryo Kurokiba. Moreover, because of Yuki, Ryo Kurokiba had spent some time training at the Totsuki resort beforehand, making his culinary skills even stronger than in the original story. It was just that everyone here didn't know the two very well yet. Otherwise, they might even wonder if they were long-lost brothers. After all, the two had quite a few similarities. Meanwhile, downstairs in the kitchen, Fumio Damido was very surprised when she saw the ingredients Yuki brought. Just what kind of pig did this leg come from? I can't imagine how big that pig was. Fumio Damido was stunned looking at the pig leg Yuki took out. It was simply too large. This is quite a rare ingredient. I obtained it by chance. I don't know if I'll be able to get the same ingredient again, Yuki said, shaking his head. The ingredients he obtained from small bait were entirely random. He wasn't sure if he could obtain the same ingredient again in the future. Hearing this, Fumio Damido didn't pry further but offered to help Yuki process it. After all, such a large pig leg was indeed not easy to handle. However, Yuki refused her offer. For others, preparing such a large pig leg alone would be extremely troublesome. But for Yuki, it was a different story. Taking out the 7-star knives, Yuki directly unleashed the Raging Bull Blue Dragon Slash. Several knives became a blur in Yuki's hands, their blades swiftly gliding through the pig leg. The speed was so fast that Fumio Damido could barely see clearly. In the blink of an eye, Yuki had already prepared the pig leg before him. Like a skilled butcher, the pig leg was directly dissected into different portions. At the same time, an incredibly enticing aroma burst forth. This was a barbecue pig's leg. The meat inside was already cooked, and there was sauce inside. After cutting it open, the aroma immediately exploded outward. Less than greater than 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 less than greater than. #. Keep the chapters coming. Support with Power Stones. #. Every 100 Power Stones equals 1 bonus chapter. #. Add to library. 30. Pork with built-in sauce. Bonus. Thank you for 200 Power Stones. Here's your bonus chapter. Less than greater than 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 less than greater than. This is sauce. This meat. Is it already cooked? Quote. Fumio Damida's eyes lit up when she smelled the aroma. But she quickly realized that the meat was indeed cooked and even had sauce inside. A barbecue pig's leg was different from its back. The back was clearly recognizable as roasted meat at a glance. But the leg was different. It looked raw. When Yuki took out the barbecue pig leg, the cut surface was facing down. So Fumio Damido hadn't realized it was cooked. Only after it was cut open did she discover this peculiarity. That's right. It's already cooked, with sauce inside. You could say it's a finished product, Yuki said with a smile. He didn't plan to do much cooking with the barbecue pig. Just heat it up a bit. After all, this barbecue pig was already cooked and came with its own sauce. Yuki had no intention of going through extra trouble for further preparation. The reason was simple. It would be difficult to find a sauce better than this one. Since it was a capture level 1 ingredient, finding suitable seasonings to match it naturally wasn't easy. It was similar to when Toriko and the others caught air from the 8th continent in the world of Toriko. Tengu branch from Toriko tried to cook air. Although it tasted good, it wasn't as delicious as eating it directly. This wasn't because Brunch's culinary skills were lacking, but because the other seasonings couldn't keep up. It was like comparing coarse salt from the past to refined salt today. Coarse salt had a poor texture and an unpleasant taste. Using the two different salts to cook the same ingredients would result in completely different flavors. So, Yuki didn't plan on overcomplicating things with the barbecue pig. Simply heating it up would do. The aroma was already very rich even without heating. Once heated, the fragrance became even stronger, spreading even beyond Polar Star Dormitory. Fortunately, there weren't any other residents near Polar Star, just woods. However, the aroma did make the various animals in Yoshino Yuki's livestock area a bit restless. If animals reacted like this, imagine the effect on humans. Everyone in the dormitory, chatting while waiting for Yuki, was attracted by this fragrance. The group quickly made their way downstairs. And the closer they got to the kitchen, the stronger the aroma became. What on earth is Yuki cooking? This smell is so intense. Shun Ibusaki couldn't help but exclaim. He specialized in smoked dishes and was naturally quite sensitive to such fragrances. The group quickly arrived at the kitchen and saw the massive, dissected pig leg and Yuki heating the ingredients. Fumio Damido was watching from the side. I knew this smell would draw you guys over. Just wait a bit. It'll be ready soon. Fumio Damido wasn't surprised to see everyone appear. After all, the aroma was simply impossible to ignore. She was now waiting here specifically to taste this incredible meat. Is this an entire pig leg? How can it be so huge? Quote, although the pig leg had already been dissected, because Yuki had only used a small portion, the rest still clearly indicated it was a whole leg. But the sheer size of the leg shocked Yoshino Yuki. She was in charge of Polar Star's livestock area. Besides that, Yoshino Yuki's family also held hunting events back home. Yoshino Yuki had participated in these hunting events before, so she naturally had a good understanding of animal sizes. This pig leg was too large. She couldn't fathom how big the actual pig was. Judging by the proportions, this pig was many times larger than a normal-sized pig. It was completely beyond the scope of typical animals. You guys don't need to ask about such things. Just wait to eat. Before Yuki could speak, Fumio Damido chimed in. Hearing this, anyone with a bit of common sense naturally understood Fumio Damida's meaning and didn't bother asking further. However, they were still imagining the size of this pig. The more they thought about it, the more startled they became. But their imagination was soon interrupted. The reason was simple. The aroma of the meat snapped them back to reality. Yuki had also finished heating the meat. When heating, he made sure to preserve the flavor of the meat as much as possible. In this respect, no one could do better than Yuki. After all, Yuki had the Inferno special ability. He was unbeatable in fire control. You guys came just in time. Help carry these plates over to Marui's room. Auntie Fumio, this is yours. After handing a portion to Fumio Damido, Yuki called on the others to help carry the plates. Hearing this, the others snapped back to their senses and immediately gathered around. They couldn't wait to taste such meat, so they were extremely eager to help. Seeing these youngsters so energetic, Fumio Damido smiled. She thought of her own past. Unfortunately, she was older now. Everyone would always invite Fumio Damido to these gatherings, but she would always refuse. However, whenever they had a party, Fumio Damido would prepare some food for them. It could only be said that Fumio Damido truly was the perfect dorm manager. If it were any other dorm manager, They would definitely not tolerate students making noise and staying up late. But Polar Star was different. No matter how much noise they made, Fumio Damido wouldn't interfere. She enjoyed this lively atmosphere. This was mainly because there were few people in Polar Star, and there weren't any other residents nearby. Otherwise, even if Fumio Damido was willing, she wouldn't be able to let them get away with it. After returning to Zenji Marui's room, everyone eagerly gathered around and stared expectantly at Yuki. Since Yuki was the one who brought the food, they naturally needed his permission before they could start eating. No need to stare at me like that. Dig in. Quote. Seeing their behavior, Yuki was somewhat amused. It felt like he was in kindergarten. Hearing Yuki's words, everyone eagerly started to eat. Thankfully, the foodgasm effect didn't exist in this world anymore. Otherwise, Yuki couldn't imagine what the effects of this barbecue pig would be like. What delicious meat! And this sauce! I swear, this is absolutely the most delicious meat I've ever had. How did you achieve this texture? How can meat even reach this level of quality? Quote. Soma Yukihiro exclaimed in amazement. He could tell that the meat's deliciousness primarily came from the meat itself. Although Yuki's use of Inferno when heating it up was a bonus, the natural flavor of the meat was clearly the key. Less than greater than 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 less than greater than. Tilde hash. Keep the chapters coming. Support with Power Stones. Tilde hash. Every 100 Power Stones equals 1 bonus chapter. Tilde hash. Add to library.